Hey everybody, it is Matt Weaver here with Weaver Barns, and today I want to show you how to repaint your Weaver barn. To repaint your shed, you're going to need to do several things. One of the things is you need to look and see if there's any loose paint. And if there is, you need to scrape any loose paint off of it. So you can use a wire brush for that. I'm going to be using a pressure washer and then going over and just making sure that all the loose paint's off. And you're going to need to wash it regardless because of getting dirt off, so that you get good adhesion with the next coat of paint that you're going to put on. All right, so it's been several hours and we let this thoroughly dry. What you want to do, you want to make sure it is very dry before you start painting. And I'm actually going to take the doors off. There's really two ways to do this. The one way is with the doors shut, because you have a double stud door block, this wooden piece here in the doorway. You can actually, if you have a 3.5 inch screw, you can take one screw and angle it up into that, and then angle another screw down here into the floor, and that will hold the door in place, and just simply take your hinges off. That's one way to do it. The way I'm going to do it today is actually just take screws out of the hinges and take the doors off, and then I'll put them back on when I'm done painting. But that's the only thing I gotta do, is take the doors off. So sometimes you gotta bust them loose. So we're just gonna go down to one. Just gonna go down to one screw on top and bottom, and then we'll take the door off. When we painted it, sometimes it'll actually stick almost like glue to your hinges. So I may need to get a screwdriver behind it to pop that off, but we'll see here. The bottom screw out. Let's see how loose we are here. Start with the middle hinge, because that one you should be able to break free before you get into the rest. So it will make some marks. That's unfortunately part of the deal with this. This is just part of having natural wood here. You're going to pull up some strands when it's hard like that. Don't worry about it. It's okay. This is just what it's stuck to. Of course, the screws is what's holding it, but we'll paint over this. And if you have wood filler, if you're concerned about the indentations, you can just put a little wood filler in there and paint over it. It's not a problem, but this is just going to be, this is just part of the process. You don't need to knock this stuff off, because that will fit right back into the space where you had it. So, but we'll paint over this so that it all looks great. Just lay them in the grass. This is also a time, if you want to, you can order replacement hinges and door hardware. If you're wanting to have a brand new look, you certainly can order hinges from us and replace it and make it look brand new. First. So it's up to you. It is definitely easier to do the whole screw in the top and the bottom into the frame, but I like this in a way, because I'm not going to have to remove the hinges completely off of the door. It's less screws to deal with. The choice is really yours. You can do it both ways, but for myself, I like to take the doors off, but for a homeowner, it may be easier to simply put the 3.5 inch screws top and bottom, and then just take the hinges off to paint. So the paint I'm actually using is from the company we buy our paints for at Weaver Barns, which is Haley Paints out of Pennsylvania. They've been in the barn paint business for over 30 years. They specialize in basically coatings for sheds, pavilions, etc. You can get this on our website or from theirs. You can also use like a Sherwin-Williams, Lowe's, whatever exterior grade paint you like. Just the better, higher quality is obviously going to last longer. So get something that is very high quality. And then of course, just make sure you stir it up, make sure that it hasn't separated. In this case, it looks good to me. So we are going to start the project. Stir the paint really well, unless you just got it from the store. So long time ago, I actually was the main painter at Weaver Barnes, and one of the things that is actually quite handy is if you have a little piece of leftover drip edge or something like this, you can use this to get in against another color, like for instance here, and then you can paint up to it on the back side, and it keeps you from hitting against the sides of the trim. Pro tip. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim around the windows, and just because they're a different color. But after that, I will then do the cracks first, and with that you want to use you can use a smaller brush. You can also use a round brush. I wouldn't recommend like a 4-incher. They're a little bit too big to get in there. And then the secret to doing a groove well is just have a good load of paint on the brush, because you can work it out easily enough. But it's easier than having too little paint on the brush where you're like working really hard to try to get paint in there. You actually want a pretty good coat of paint. Many different types of rollers you can use for this application. I'm actually going to use this narrow one just to kind of do some of this smaller area stuff. And then I have a wide format roller that I'll use in the bigger areas of the wall. But it definitely makes your life easier if you trim in the corners and in the grooves before you start rolling your final body product onto the face of the shed. So one of the things to think about is how thick of a coating you're putting on, and that has a lot to do with what type of material you're working with. Like in this case, this is Duratemp siding, and Ready had a primer coat, Ready had the primary paint coat. It doesn't need a really thick coat of paint. If you use a heavy anti-sag kind of a paint like this, one normal coat, not excessive, but one normal coat will be sufficient to repaint this. Things like trim, like this is cedar, something like this, you may need to hit it twice to get the saturation into the grooves to get coverage. So that's just something to think about. You're going to have a difference between the type of materials that you are painting. So we're going to hang the door back on, and this, you want to hang this one first, the one with the flange on the side, before you hang the other one. And the easiest way to hang it is to bring it over close to where it needs to go. Put your foot underneath. Make sure you wear good shoes for this, okay? But you can rest it about on your foot, and that brings it up closer to the level that you need it to be, and then you just lift it. There's one. And then you can let it down against the trim, your bottom screw. There you go. Same thing with this door. Just rest it on your foot, grab it by the top here, and kind of maneuver the door. I got wind blowing in right now. Find the top hole there. There's that, and we're going to find the bottom. Lay the hinge down. Let's see where we were before. Next thing you're going to do is check the doors elevation-wise, etc. Obviously, you went into the same holes, but there is always a little bit of a gap. And so you just want to be able to adjust the door to fit that. You can loosen this screw a little bit. You can get it over to where you need it. And put the screws back into these holes here. Which this has a perfect fit right here. Notice here it actually needs to come over a little bit. So I'm going to pull this off, move it a little bit. Find that hole. And now we do the middle. Some people are concerned maybe about, do you need to use longer screws, etc. In my experience, certainly not necessary. You can. But there is still plenty of grab. There's still plenty of grab for this to hold the doors. You can easily hold these doors in here with just literally one screw. So all of the 4 screws in the hinge is overkill, and it will absolutely not cause you any issues in the long run. So in this one, I'm going to adjust it out a little bit. Check the bottom. Looks like it could go over just a smidge. Just shift it a little bit. You can certainly adjust this again if you want it like perfect. For me, this shed is 8 years old, and they're settling in the foundation. So I'm just going to put the screws back into the holes where it came. And this is caused by shifting in the foundation. You could take a jack, put it in the corner, jack it up, and get the doors to be perfectly straight again. But in this case, I'm just trying to restore what I had previously. And so I just put them back into the same screw holes here. We are good. So we just finished this project. We got a new paint on the face of this. I actually had repainted this a few years ago, so I don't need to touch that up, but I probably will in another year or so. But I did want to talk about one more thing, and that is the consideration of whether to use paint or stain. It's a question we get asked some, and it honestly comes down to your preference. But there's some things to know about choosing either one. If you go the paint route, what is nice about paint is that its maintenance cycle is not as demanding as stain would be. Paint something like this on a substrate that's fairly stable, something like the Duratemp here, you're looking at anywhere between, we used to say about 6 to 10 years, depending on how it looks. It does fade a little bit with time, and so it does make it really pop when you put a fresh coat of paint on there. But it's going to adhere well, it's going to stay on there, and you're going to be good for anywhere from 5, 6 to 10 years at the most. But realistically, you should be recoating 6 to 7 years in. On the stains, it's a little different. Stain is really complicated because part of what makes paint successful is its ability to block UV light. And UV is the #1 damaging agent in any kind of surface coating that you put on. So if you're putting a solid coat of paint on, it does a better job at protecting against UV damage than stain does that is semi-transparent. And that, coupled with the fact that the EPA has been cracking down on products that emit VOCs and things like that, stains have diminished in quality over the years. And so it is not as easy to buy a quality stain as what it used to be, simply because good stains emit a lot of VOCs. So it's just something to consider. What we use at Weaver Barnes, we've tried a lot of different stains over the years. What we use is a product that Haley puts out that is a urethane product that has a tint in it. It's actually a toner. So it is not a traditional oil-based stain that you would have bought back in the 80s and 90s. It is actually a toner. And what happens is when you put that toner on the product, every layer you put over top, it gets darker just like a stain. And here's the downside of stains. Over time, your stain job will never look as good as it was new unless you completely strip the stain off of the product and redo it. So for instance, in log homes, after 20 years or so, a lot of times they'll come in, they'll corn cob to get right down to bare wood to get a fresh new stain job look. In between those 20 years, a lot of times they'll put on maintenance coats, and you'll see these log cabins get darker and darker and darker and darker because every coat you put on the top makes it darker. So it's something to consider when you're looking at stain. Stain is a little bit of a different animal than paint, because paint, your colors stay fairly consistent even though they may fade a little bit. But with stain, every application is going to darken how it appears to look. So it's something to consider when you're making a selection. For the lowest maintenance on this type of product, paint is definitely lower maintenance than stain. The lowest maintenance that we offer is obviously vinyl siding. Vinyl siding is just like on a house where you don't actually paint it. You would have to you just replace it in 20 to 25 years. But anyway, that gives you a rundown of the options that you have. We definitely do all of it. We do choose the best products that we have. These products have good and decent warranties, good company that's working for us to help us make sure that issues are resolved if they do pop up, because we are dealing with an exterior product in the sun on natural wood products. So obviously there can be some cracking and stuff and peeling and things that can take place with these products as time goes on. Again, I'm just trying to give you an honest picture of what happens, but we have found these products to be good. They are good quality, they last, and easy to maintain.